All right, good morning, everyone. So today what we're doing, we are taking our first Jeopardy quiz. Well, David, Emma, Zach, and Andrew will be doing Jeopardy for the first time. And then we are going to start talking about the policy brief. I'll explain exactly what it is, what it's used for, and then we'll start going through the step-by-step guide. And the last thing we'll do today is I'll pull up the library website and we'll start looking for articles, and I'll help you guys figure out what articles work best for this type of project. Okay, do we have any questions before we begin? No? All right, so David Allen, do we have David? Where's David? I don't see David. Okay, Emma, there's Emma. Zach, there's Zach, and Andrew. Where's Andrew? There he is. Okay, so it looks like, does anybody know David Allen? We don't know who that is. At first I thought it was like David Allen from the university, because sometimes they like put administrators into our class to like watch us and make sure we're doing the right thing. But I think this is actually a student named David. Nobody knows him? Okay. All right. So
he's a student, but I don't have his number.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I thought at first I really thought it was like David Allen, but okay. All right. Well, if you miss Jeopardy, you get a 0, unfortunately. You have to be here to play to get the 5 out of 5. Okay, so Emma, Zach, and Andrew, if you guys want to turn your mics on, I'm just going to pull up. Wait, hold on. There's a second screen. Nope, David Allen, still not here. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to pull the questions up one at a time, and you guys just shout out the answer. You guys are like kind of all over my screen. So like the 3 that I'm supposed to be watching. So it's hard for me to tell who said what first. So I might have to ask you to tell me who said what. All right. Okay, we can all see the screen? Good. Okay, are we ready?
Yes.
All right.
False.
Who said that? Zach?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that is correct. 1 for Zach. Let me just keep track. Okay, here we go.
What doesn't work?
No.
Nothing works.
Yes. Was that Zach again?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, 2 for Zach.
True?
False? Which one?
True.
True? Are we, is that what we're going with? True?
Yeah.
All right. True is correct. I don't know if I should give that point to Emma or Zach. Zach, were you the one that said true, false?
He had it first.
He had it first?
I said false.
Oh, okay. So Zach said true first. Is that what's going on here? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right, Zach. Hold on. I have a comment. Or a chat. 1 second. Hold on. Oh, okay. No problem, Grace. Okay, here we go.
True.
Yes. Dang, Zach. All right, last one.
Technology?
No.
Was it the baby boom theory?
Yes. Geez, Zach, 5. All 5 go to Zach. Yes. So you could say the baby boomers aging out of crime. You could say something about the age crime curve. You could have just said demographics. I would have accepted that. What other answers did you guys put online?
Economic stability, like falling unemployment.
Yep. You could say economics, unemployment, rising wages, any of those. Anything else? There's one other you could have put.
Would inhabilitation work?
Say that again.
Inhabilitation.
Incapacitation.
That
That
too.
what you
Put
meant?
incarceration.
Incarceration or incapacitation. Hampton, I think you just made a word up. So I haven't gone through and graded yours. If I see that word, I'll probably just give you half credit because I'm assuming you mean incarceration.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so if I see that, I'll try to remember and give you half credit. But anything about incarceration, incapacitation, I will accept that. The only one I won't take is if you mentioned deterrence, because it wasn't the deterrent effect, it was just the incapacitation effect. All right, so Zach is our winner. Emma, Zach, and Andrew, you guys all get a 5 out of 5 for playing, and Zach, you will be back once we get all the way through the alphabet, and the last 3 standing get extra credit on the final exam. So those of you that have not played Jeopardy in my class before, this is how it works. Usually in person, I just have you guys step outside the classroom while everybody takes the quiz, and then you guys come in and answer it, and then people can grade their own quiz, but we have a plague, so we can't do that. So this is how we're doing it. All right, questions. Okay, I got a few emails last night. I think students were confused about when the quiz was available. So just to clarify, you have 24 hours to take it starting at 10 a.m. when this class would end. So we have our second quiz today. I apologize. We're not going to have 2 quizzes in a week moving forward. Again, it was just we started weird last week in the middle of the week. So you have your second quiz today, and that will be covering everything that we went over in lecture 2 and your second reading. So that's the evidence-based correction stuff. So everything we talked about on Monday and Wednesday is what you will be quizzed on today. Now, let's see who's playing Jeopardy on Monday. So we've got Grace Cooper. She just messaged me and said her computer was dying. So we might have to remind, I think she got kicked out because of that. Okay, so Grace, Gavin Crawford, where are you? There's Gavin. You'll be playing Michael Darcy. Do we have Michael in here? I thought I saw him enter. Oh, there you are. Okay. You'll be playing and Kyle Davis. I just saw you. Where are you? Okay. So we've got Grace, Gavin, Michael, and Kyle. You 4 do not take your quiz today, and you're going to do it live on Monday morning, just like everybody else did. Everybody else, you take your quiz. So unfortunately, the 3 that just played, you'll have to take it today as well. So Emma, Zach, and Andrew, make sure sometime between 10 a.m. today and 10 a.m. tomorrow, you take your second quiz. We got it? All right. Very successful first Jeopardy. Most excellent. Okay, questions before we start talking about policy brief stuff? No questions? Okay, so. All right, so I have created a step-by-step guide for you about how to write a policy brief. It is imperative that you guys follow these steps. So let me just kind of explain what a policy brief is. So a policy brief is probably one of the most realistic assignments you will do in school. Anytime you're dealing with legislators or criminal justice administrators, they are interested in implementing or creating some sort of program or policy. A lot of times what they will do is ask a researcher to put together a policy brief. And the point of the policy brief is to gather as much research as they can about this topic, summarize the research, and give recommendations on policy based on this research. So let's go through and talk about each of the sections that you will be writing. So a policy brief is front loaded. So the executive summary is the first thing that you will read, when in reality, this will be one of the last sections that you write, because you have to understand all of this to give a summary of it. So your executive summary is just a brief blurb about what your topic is, and then a bulleted list of policy implications, okay? I've worked with a lot of legislators and criminal justice administrators. They go bonkers for bullet points. They love something that they can read really quickly, especially a legislator. When they have just a few minutes to read a policy brief before they vote on whether they're going to fund this, that executive summary can be very helpful because it can tell them in several bullet points if the research supports implementing this program. The next part is a statement of the problem, which is why do we need this program, right? So if we're looking at prison-based education, prisoners are undereducated. They have low unemployment rates, so on and so forth, or high unemployment rates, right? Something that would indicate that we would need a prison education program. Then you're going to describe the topic. So you're going to tell me what is a prison-based education program, what sort of program or what sort of education programs do they offer, like GED versus college versus adult basic education. You're going to kind of describe those things. The next section is the most important one, and this is actually where we're starting. We're starting in the middle of the policy brief because this is the literature review, right? So for our purposes, we're going to gather 5 articles. If your topic is prison-based education programs, you're going to gather 5 articles on those programs, how effective they are, and you're going to summarize each article in terms of the research design, the results, and the limitations. Those results, based on those results, that's how you get your policy implications that will go up here. The next section is prevalence. So this is, do these programs exist nationwide and do they exist in South Carolina? This can be very helpful for policymakers. So for instance, if we're talking about implementing a program and I can show that it exists in 49 states with the exception of our state, that's something that's very helpful, right? Or if they exist in all these states that have this particular issue, like if it's a drug treatment program, like if they exist in the states that have like a high opioid addiction and our state has that high opioid addiction, but we don't have that program, that also gives them reason to implement this. The last section right here, all you're going to do is take those bulleted policy implications. You're going to pull them down here, and underneath implication, you will have a sub-bullet that shows which of your 5 studies support this. This can be very helpful if you're a legislator and I'm recommending 4 or 5 different things, but there's only enough money to cover 2 of them. They can see which of the recommendations have the most research behind them that might focus where they or help them determine where they're going to spend that money. So this is what all the sections look like, but there's a specific order to writing this. You have to start with the lit review because you cannot recommend policy based on research if you haven't done the research first. So when we start all the way up here, steps 1, 2, and 3 just involve the lit review. You'll see that first part, that executive summary, you don't even write that until step 9, right? Because you need to do all of the research before you can summarize it. So be very, very careful how you do this. There's a reason I have you do it in this order. All right, so when we're talking about these, actually, let me go back and clarify a little bit. When you're talking about these sections, this can be very helpful. So like I said, a legislator will often read this part right here when they just have a few minutes to vote. When they have voted on this, and if the state is going forward with implementing this, a lot of times there's a press release. So the statement of the problem, the description of the topic, and the prevalence usually is information that they can use to to do a press release. The literature review and the implications and recommendations usually goes to their research staff to make sure that we are using good research to support this right here. A lot of times in a press release, they will also embed links to specific articles that show that these programs work, and you can determine which articles to include through the lit review and through this part right here. So a policy brief is a multifaceted document that is used all across government. So today we are going to talk about steps 1, 2, and 3. So step 1 is choosing a topic, okay? So you need to pick some sort of correctional program or policy that you would like to study. If you are really interested in something that's criminal justice related, that's not 100% corrections related, that's okay. Just send me an email or we can have a Zoom session and I can make sure, like I prefer that you spend all semester doing something that you're interested in, not something that fits my vision of what this should be. So if you're interested in something that's a little bit outside of the scope of corrections, let's have a conversation. I would much rather you work on something that you like. So when you're thinking about a topic, when you start choosing articles, you have to think about your independent and your dependent variable. So your independent variable is the thing that we're studying, like an education program, and your dependent variable is your outcome. So for our purposes, you're probably going to be dealing with one of 4 outcomes. That's recidivism, employment. If it's a drug program, it might be drug relapse, right? Or if it's a prison program, you also might be looking at prison misconduct or disciplinary infractions. If you can find 5 articles that focus on the same independent and dependent variable, that makes it easier. So your independent variables really should always be the same thing, but you might find small differences, right? So if we focus on education, you might find one article that looks at the effect of GED programs on something, and another article that focuses on college programs on something. So it's okay if you have slight differences in that, but every time you have slight differences, you need a policy implication that goes with that. So say we have 3 studies that look at the effect of a GED program on recidivism and 3 studies that look at the effect of a GED program on employment. Since we have 2 outcomes, we automatically have 2 policy implications, because we cannot assume that an education program is going to affect recidivism the same way it would affect employment. If it does, we could combine that into one policy implication, but it's unlikely that that's the case. So you might have one program that, or one implication that says, implement a prison-based education program to moderately reduce recidivism, or implementing education programs will not affect employment, right? So those are different findings. They require different implications. So if you can find 5 articles that study the same dependent variable, that inherently makes it easier, because then you just have one implication, but it's really not a big deal. I can help you with this. But if you've got 4 articles that look at the effect of GED on recidivism and you're trying to find a 5th one, and you can find a 5th one that focuses on GED on recidivism, I would choose that one over another one, because you're inherently making it easier. You're reducing the number of implications because your topic is more narrow. All right, so I don't expect everybody to have a topic. I would be surprised if more than 2 people had a topic, but that's okay. If you don't understand or you need help choosing a topic, I'm happy to help you do that. So once you have that, the next step is to start locating articles. We're not using Google, we're using the library website, because with the library website, you get access to scholarly articles. If you're not familiar with a scholarly article, let me explain why this is more important. So anybody can put anything that they want on Google, and you can make it look as official as you want, but when you publish a scholarly article, it is peer reviewed. So let me explain what that is. Every time I publish an article, I have to send a journal 2 copies of my article, one that has my name on it and one that doesn't have any identifying information on it. I can't even say that I work at the Citadel, right? I just have to make sure my name's on it, my affiliation's not on it, nothing on there. They're going to take that blind copy and they're going to send it to 3 experts in the field that I don't know. So 3 experts in the field who I don't know have a hold of my article, and they don't know that they're reading my article. They're going to go through it with a fine-tooth comb, and they will tell the editor of this journal one of 3 things. Reject this article because it's terrible. 2, accept it with minor revisions, or accept it with no revisions. Or the most common is 3, which is an R&R, which is a revise and resubmit. So when you go through those articles, they're going to list all the problems that they have or all the things that need to be fixed. Usually when I do a peer review, when I'm recommending a revise and resubmit, I have 4 single-spaced pages of problems with those articles. So that's pretty common. So you'll get that back with all of these problems, issues that experts in the field say, you need to address this before we can publish this article, or this information is inaccurate, or you should be doing this analysis, not this analysis. So when you are reading a scholarly article, it has been verified. This is why we're not using anything you can find on Google. This is why the library spends millions of dollars a year so that you have access to these scholarly articles. So we're going to use them. Okay. So a note about choosing the articles. Since this is a policy brief on the effectiveness on a program, the article has to be assessing how effective it is. So when you're looking at titles, look for things like the effect of, or analyzing the effectiveness, right? We don't want to look at an article that isn't testing something. So you might see an article that just describes a program or a policy or describes a problem with this program. That's not what we're looking for. We are looking for how effective is this program, and what that outcome is will be dependent on the articles that you can find. So is it effective at reducing recidivism and increasing employment? Is it effective at reducing drug relapse? That's what we're looking for, effectiveness, right? So the main question is, does this program or policy work? That's what we care about. All right, so let's pull up the library website. So those of you that have had my class before know my spiel about the library website. You can go right here and click and type in, but what this is going to do is going to search every single database that we have in the library. If you want to narrow your focus towards criminal justice related articles, I recommend hovering over research, going to databases. My favorite database is called Criminal Justice Abstract. So I click on C right here. And now it's going to filter out anything that's not criminal justice related. So if I typed prison-based education programs and I didn't go through this, it's probably going to pull a bunch of other education related things that aren't prison. All right, so let's just start with this. Shit. Okay. Looking at articles 1 through 4, which ones can we use?
Two.
Yes, 2 is perfect. It also has our little magic word, propensity score matching. What about number 1? Sam?
It's talking about connection to reduced disciplinary infractions and not recidivism.
Right. You're right. So it would be better if we could focus on recidivism. But if we couldn't find 5 studies on that, this is still testing the effectiveness, right? It's just the effectiveness is on disciplinary infractions. So this is prison misconduct, right? The other small issue with this is an HIV prison-based peer education program. So technically it is an education program, but we're starting to see that independent variable stray a little bit away from the rest. So if you couldn't find 5 articles that looked at straight up prison education on recidivism, then you could use this, but I'm here to tell you there are thousands of those articles, so we don't need that right there. But in a pinch, we could use this, but this would need its own policy implication, because not only are we not talking about recidivism, we're also not talking about the same type of education. So this article right here would require its own policy implication because it's not the same thing as the others, right? All right. So this one looks good, right? Looks effective. Let me tell you something that's really irritating. You see this conference? What that means is that these authors presented this at a conference in 2009. I don't know why this shows up, because if you click it, you don't actually get any information. Like, you had to be in this presentation. So I'm not really sure. I still need to ask Elise Wallace about why it pulls conference stuff, because if you click on it, you don't get anything. The other thing I'd like to point out is the difference between interlibrary loan and PDF full text. If it's PDF full text, you've got access to it right away. And what I like to do is, as I'm going through these articles, if I see one that I like, full text finder, I'll show you that in a second. I just pull it up in a separate tab and I can keep going. So PDF full text pulls it up right away. Full text finder, I have students that get confused about this a lot. Occasionally it pulls it up right away, but every once in a while you have to click a couple more buttons. Like, if it just shows you a series of links on the side, you'll just have to click a link and then click another link. So if you see this full text finder and you can't actually find the article, shoot me an email and I'll help you find it. It just makes it a little bit harder. If it is interlibrary loan, what that means is our library does not own it, but they will get it from another library and email it to you. But you have to have an interlibrary loan account. So those of you that have not had my class before, I probably haven't forced you to do this. Those who have had my class, I have probably forced you to do this. To do interlibrary loan, you have to fill out a form with your information one time. You create a username and password, which I recommend be the same thing that you use for everything else. Once you have that, if you need an article, you just click on this. It remembers who I am. You log on. Can you still see this, or is it stop sharing? Oh, I have to change my password. Fuck. All right, whatever. What it would do is automatically pull the information. You click submit, and then you'll get an email from the article or from the library that says it's there. You click on this, which it's not going to let me do because it wants me to change my password, which I'm not going to do. So that's a whole nother issue because I have one password for everything. Anyways, it'll be there in a PDF. You get an email from the library, you sign on to the interlibrary loan, and you can download the PDF. Okay. Who has a topic? Let's look for some articles. So if you volunteer and we find articles that work, I will download them and email them to you. So while we're, oh, yep, Zachary.
I think it was, I was going to use cognitive behavioral therapy.
Okay. So I know this literature pretty well, and it's kind of all over the place. It's possible to do. I just know that like you have multiple different samples. Like, so you'll have one study that looks at the effect on males, one study that looks at the effect on sex offenders. So when you have separate populations like that, you need to create separate implications because they often don't react the same way. Okay. So once we get started with this, you may want to change your topic because it's kind of all over the place. Okay. So this is what I mean right here. So you might have an outcome that looks at depression and anxiety. Let's do prison. Let's add in prison and recidivism and see if we can narrow it down. But I usually recommend starting with a general search term just to see how many we have before we get really specific. So that's not in English. Care package, prison domestic violence programs. So I'm assuming this is a cognitive behavioral program for domestic violence abusers. Here's one for sex offenders. This is never something we want. We don't want a commentary. We want how effective is this? More sex offender stuff right here. More sex offender stuff. So there's a lot of research on cognitive behavioral programs with sex offenders. Here's one for male prisoners in Iran. This is what I mean, Zach. That for some reason, this literature is all over the place. So for each of these topics, you'd probably have to have a separate policy implication. We cannot assume that male prisoners in Iran act the same way as American male prisoners. So we'd have to have separate implications for that. Do you want to stick with that topic?
Probably not.
Probably not. We want to choose something else. Do you have another idea, or does somebody have a better idea? I mean, we can do this, but it's going to be a pain in the ass. All right, Sam.
With something, I think there's a couple prisons back home that have like trade schools inside of them. And
You're talking about a vocational program.
Yeah,
Yes.
there's a bunch of like welding and metal work and stuff. And there's guys who can learn how to be carpenters and welders and stuff like that. I thought that'd be kind of cool to look into.
Yes. So I'm very familiar with that literature. Actually, my article is the second one on here. The term you want is vocational programs. we're going to focus on vocation as a whole. When researchers study these, they don't look at just welding versus computer technology versus, whatever. They just look at vocational as a whole. So the only issue that we have with the literature sometimes is that occasionally a prison will have a vocational program and a straight up education program, and they'll combine the two. But you should be able to find just vocational programs right here. So both of these first articles would work right here. This is a qualitative evaluation of a fitness and vocational training program for substance use recovery. That is super duper specific. I would maybe try to pick just a straight up vocation on recidivism, like my article right here. Mine looks at recidivism and employment. This one would work too. And one thing to note, so especially for you guys that are doing any sort of education or vocational programs or drug court, stuff where there's a lot of literature on it, what you might find is a couple of meta-analyses or systematic analysis or systematic review. So remember, those are like the authors will take 20 to 30 programs and synthesize the results. So if you find a meta-analysis or a systematic review, there's two ways you can use it in this project. You can use the entire meta-analysis and consider that one study, or you could go in and where they list their 30 articles, you could choose 5 from there and then look those 5 up individually and use that. So it's totally up to you, or you could use the meta-analysis as one and then pull 4 that they use, and then you analyze those 4 to create your 5. So there's a couple of ways you could do it if you're dealing with a meta-analysis. All right, so which ones do we want, Sam?
I mean, not to be biased, but you said yours was the better
is.
of the two because yours was a little less specific. So I think we'll go with that one.
And it uses propensity score matching. All right, so we got that one. We want 3.
Number 6, they're on the bottom, prisons as schools. It says it's Chinese. So would that be kind of like the Iranian prisons where it wouldn't necessarily match up?
I would try to stay in the US. For some of you, you might have to go outside the US, which is fine. You're just going to have separate implications for each country because we're culturally different, right? But the bigger problem I have here is it's their participation. So if you're looking at this and you can't quite tell what the outcome might be, or if this is a good study, if you hover over this little guy right here and then bring your mouse in here, you can read the abstract. So let's see if you examine. Okay, here we go. This is the problem. This is trying to predict who would volunteer for this program, which is not exactly effectiveness. So I'm less concerned about the China part and more concerned that this is not really a study on the effectiveness of it. Uh-oh, what did I just do? No, go back. Okay. What others do we like? Do we think might work?
Do we do like animal programs inside of prisons?
Yeah, we can definitely do that. Hold that question. You'll be getting a lot of my research in there too.
Yeah, I was gonna do the dog programs.
Yeah, Patrick,
Yeah, that
you
was
did the
mine.
dog programs. Yeah, and now I've got even 2 other studies that have been published. So if you do dog programs, it's probably just going to be hill.
Oh, great.
So, all right, looking at these right here, what other ones would work?
Number 9 looks good, and it's inside the U.S. with the New York State Department of Corrections.
Ooh, what's that
But-
first word?
There's something I'm missing here.
Look at the title. Why might not this?
Perceptions.
Yeah, I don't really, this is not, that doesn't like.
So is that more like them just commenting on the program and not actually doing any research? Like, hey, this is a good program
Well,
versus, hey,
it's
this is a
not
bad
that
program.
we get into research. We want to know how the prisoners are perceiving this to know how we would want to implement it or changes we would make. I'm not saying the research isn't important, but for our purposes, I don't give a shit about their perceptions. We just want to know, does this work, right? I see 2 that we could use. Which 2?
Would number 8 be a good option?
Yes. And I'm going to give you a little heads up. Number 10, you see this RCT? That means randomized controlled trial. And we love randomization. So the only issue I'm seeing here is it's specifically for high risk juveniles. So that requires its own policy implication, right? First of all, spoiler alert, nothing works for juveniles. I'm here to tell you, if you study a juvenile program, it's not going to work because these kids are right in the middle of the age crime curve. If you think of, at least me, when I was a teenager, you couldn't tell me anything. So if you're doing anything with juveniles, don't be discouraged. It's unlikely the program is going to be effective. So my thought is, and well, I know if you chose this one and you did the policy implication for juveniles, you're going to say this program works super well for adults, not for juveniles, right? Now, if a program has a null effect, that means you can still recommend it. If it makes them worse, then you say, stop using this, okay? So does everybody know what scared straight is? Those programs don't work. They make the kids so much worse. We have known this since the mid 70s. If you choose that topic, you won't find any research that goes past 1990 because we've known for 40 years, 40, 50 years that these programs don't work. But there's a TV show about it. And so wardens still implement these programs. We have these programs here in South Carolina. So when you're going through and you're looking at research and you're implementing, making recommendations for policy, if the program doesn't make them worse, you can recommend it. If it makes them worse, discontinue it, okay? All right, so we would pull this one too. We like this. Maybe, maybe not. So we'll look at these 2. Okay, so that's how we find articles. And I'm happy to schedule a one-on-one Zoom appointment with you guys just to find these articles if you want help with that. Or what you could do, if you choose the articles yourself and you send them to me, I can look and make sure they look good for you. One thing I will note, when you find articles, please make sure you download the PDF. Do not leave 50 tabs open in your computer, okay? You're gonna lose them. And especially like the library won't keep that live. Like if you go back weeks later and try to click on that, it's not gonna be there anymore. So what you need to do, oops, nope. See this little download button? You're going to download your article and you're going to save it in a folder that you can then find later, okay? Don't download the articles, email yourself the link, don't create a subject, and then when we do our first one-on-one appointment, we spend 20 minutes trying to refine the same articles. Every semester, I have 10 students at least that do that. Don't be one of those 10, I'll publicly shame you. So we want to create a folder within a Google Drive or on your desktop or in your jump drive or whatever you cool kids are doing these days that don't involve Google Drives or whatever. Create a folder somewhere and save your PDFs, okay? All right, now let's talk about step 3. Oh, shit. Okay, we have done steps 1 and steps 2, right? Step 3, we are going to create the draft of our literature review, which is the middle of our paper, okay? Don't get upset about that, but we have to do the research first. So we are going to start a draft, and this is exactly what it's going to look like right here. You're going to put the citation at the top of the page, then you're going to write research design, results, and limitations, and then we're going to go through the articles and we're going to copy and paste the information where it belongs. This is your draft, right? So when I was a college student, I used to confuse myself a lot because when I would be making drafts and outlines, I would copy and paste half of the information and paraphrase the other half. And then when it was time for me to write it up, I couldn't remember what I'd already paraphrased. So if you copy and paste everything, you know that everything then needs to be put into your own words. And plus, it's just easier, especially when you're dealing with like long, you know, like giant sample size numbers or the name of a system where we're getting the data or a complex statistical analysis. It's just easier to copy and paste it and deal with it later. Okay, so you can either put the full citation up here or just the in-text citation, like you could do Deschen et al. 1995. Et al. Just means and colleagues. Whatever, I always do the full citation because I can just copy and paste it into my reference section later. Either way, you just need to be able to notate which study you're talking about and make sure you include the year, because especially since you guys are dealing with one topic, it's not uncommon for you to have the same authors writing on the same topic over and over. So you want to notate the year so you know which study you're talking about. So I'm going to set up a Word document for the first article, and then we're going to do it together. When did I publish that? 2016? Okay, so this is what your draft should look like, right? So we got our first article ready to go. We're going to pull it up and we're going to start copying and pasting. Okay, so let's look at the abstract. Who can tell me a sentence that belongs in the research design section versus the results section?
The second sentence should be in the results section.
Using propensity. Very good. What about the next sentence?
That also should be in the results.
Right? And you see how we have two results here, one on recidivism and one on employment. So how many policy implications should come from this study? 2, right? So this program reduces recidivism, but it doesn't increase employment. And then I go on about why that is for like 5 pages. That's what researchers do. Okay, so here we go. We'll put this in the results section. Do we see anything in there within the part that I highlighted that should also go in the research design section?
Propensity score matching.
Propensity score matching. Very good. Okay, so we'll do this. Okay, so at this point, this is what we've got. And it is so hard for my OCD to not deal with how that looks unhappy in the font sizes. I'm going to leave it alone, but this is what it will start to look like right here. Okay, but the research design looks a little lacking, and so does the limitation. So we're going to dig a little deeper. God, this computer is so slow. Okay. So one other quick note. So you know all those other sections you have to write, like the statement of the problem, description of the program. You won't have to look up other articles for that. You can have your 5 and you'll be able to find that information. So most studies start, like I said, with the statement of the problem. Look at this right here. Statement of the problem. Recidivism is high, right? And then we have a little bit of a description of the topic right here. So I'm describing what a vocational program is. So you could use that for your description of the topic. Here's our lit review section. If we couldn't find 5 other articles, we could go through here and look, Wilson. Come on, computer. frozen. I'm frozen. Jesus Christ. Here's a bunch of other studies in here that you could pull for that. If you needed more information about a vocational program, here I'm describing the program within this Department of Corrections that I look at. So you could pull this information for this later on too. All right, current study. We can get more information about the research methods here. So let me scan. Okay, where's the data coming from? This is always something you want to know.
From Florida Department of Corrections.
Yes. So that's what we refer to as official data, as opposed to just going in and asking like self-report, right? Or just asking correctional officers, hey, did any of these inmates participate in the education programs? So official data is always better than self-report data. So we can see right here, we got the recidivism and data and the data about who participated in the program from Florida's OBIS system here, but we also got the arrest information from Florida Department of Law Enforcement, so the state agency, and the employment information from the Florida Department of Revenue. So we actually had a $2 million grant to create this data set. So it resulted in a recidivism cohort of almost 250,000 inmates that have been released from Florida prisons between 2004, 2011. But that where the data comes from, that's always part of your research design. You always want to note that. So let's add that in. Oh God, if you could, I'll show you how upsetting this is for my OCD. All right, now this is not our sample size, okay? That's how many people were in the data set, but that's not everybody that we looked at. So now I'm telling you where I'm getting all this data from. We already know that though. Here's about the treatment program. A covariate is a fancy word for a control variable. So these are all the variables that we used. So you can see, remember I told you to always check table 1 for how many variables they're including. So here are all of our dependent variables, but here are the variables that we're controlling for. So age at release, age at first conviction, if they're male, if they're Black, if they're Hispanic, were they employed before admission? Do they have a co-occurring disorder, meaning they have a drug abuse and or a substance abuse mental illness? How much education do they have? Are they a gang member? Like, we had a lot of variables. And then the offense that they were arrested for. So we're still searching for a sample size. Where did I write that? It's in here somewhere. Oh, here it is. So we want to note this as well. So we had 1,950 people in our treatment group and 31,000 in our control group. So we'd add that in. At this point, the only thing we're missing is limitations, which we could find later, but we're running out of time. But this is what your draft should start to look like. You can see why this is driving my OCD nuts. But this is what it should look like. You've got your citation, information from the research design, results, limitation. You're going to do that for each of your 5 articles. That is step 3. Step 4, which we aren't going to do just yet. You're going to go under here and you're going to write a policy implication for each finding. Okay. Those are steps 3 and 4. If you can do that right, you are automatically going to get a B. If you mess this up, you're probably starting at a C. That's the most important part, is understanding research and turning it into policy. Okay. I am here to help you every step of the way. I legit just want to teach you how to do this. Okay. All right, so second quiz should be open in 9 minutes. I know you guys are on the edge of your seat to take it. The 4 people not taking it will be Grace. I saw you came back, Grace. Gavin is in here. So there's Gavin. Michael Darcy. Do we have Michael?
Yep.
Oh, there you are. Sorry, you were on the second screen. And Kyle Davis. You 4 do not take your quiz today. Everybody else take it between 10 a.m. today and 10 a.m. tomorrow. And then on Monday morning, we will have Grace, Gavin, Michael, and Kyle play live. Okay? Any questions? All right. Have a lovely weekend. Send me an email if you want a one-on-one Zoom. We can pick a topic and choose articles. Okay? See you on Monday.
Dr. Hill.
Yes.
I was gonna ask you, for my topic, I'd like to do the dog programs in the prisons.
Did you do that last time?
No, ma'am. I did. I think I did mental health programs.
Okay. That's fine. Even if
but
you
I-
wanted to just fix the last one, we could do that too. But we can
I
also
think
start
I
over.
just want to start on a clean slate.
That's
If I'm
fine.
being completely honest.
That's totally fine.
Okay. And then next week, can we get together for a meeting? Because I know I'm gonna need help on this.
Yeah,
So I
of
can
course.
manage